Sometimes what you want to achieve in Access cannot be achieved with a single query. Sometimes we have to create subqueries, which get us closer to our endpoint. What I'd like to do first of all is create a query which will become a subquery. That is, it'll become the basis of another query. From the Create tab in the ribbon in the Queries group, click the Query Design button. What I'd like to add are 3 tables. I'd like to add the Campaign table, add the Pledges table, and add the Contributors table, and then close. The fields I'd like to add from the Campaign table are the campaign name and the fundraising target. The fields I'd like to then add from the Pledges table are the amount pledged and whether they've paid or not. I'd then, from the Contributors table, like to add the fields donor name, city, and country. So I've added 2 fields from the Campaign table, 2 fields from the Pledges table, and 3 fields from the Contributors table. I'd then like to save this query, so I'm just going to hit the Save button on my Quick Access toolbar and save it as QRY Crosstab. And this is going to be my subquery, the query that other queries are based off. And OK. And there's my query sitting in my navigation pane. I'll now close this query and make another query based on this query. Now this other query that I'd like to make is not a select query. It's actually what they call a crosstab query. And I guess the closest thing I can equate it to are pivot tables in Excel, if you're familiar with pivot tables. A crosstab query is different from a normal query in that you don't just have column headings. You have column headings plus you have row headings, and where the two intersect, it actually will summarize information. In fact, let's just have a look at the crosstab query before we go any further. When I double click the query QRY crosstab, I can see there are 25 records, and there's a lot of duplicity actually in this query result. So I want to create a crosstab query to summarize this information with column headings and row headings. So I'll close this table or query. To create a crosstab query, go to the Create tab in the ribbon, and in the Query section, hit the Query Wizard button. And from here you'll be able to choose the Crosstab Query Wizard. And I'll click OK. I'd like to base this particular crosstab query on the query we just created called QRY Crosstab. At the moment I'm seeing tables, but if I choose this option here, Queries, I'll be able to base my query on this query, QRY Crosstab, and Next. It's at this point that I get to tell the Query Wizard what I'd like to use as row headings, and I'd like to use the city. So I'm going to click on City and hit the greater than sign, and you can see my cities are now appearing as row headings, and I'll choose Next. Now it's asking me what would you like as column headings, and it's actually defaulted to campaign name, which is exactly what I want, so I'm just going to stay with that and go Next. Now I'd like to know what do I want to do when a campaign name and a city intersect. What I would like to do is I'd actually like to sum the amount pledged. So I choose amount pledged, and that appears in here, and I choose sum. And it will sum or total the amount pledged by campaign name and by city, so I can see which cities have contributed the most to each campaign. And I'll choose Next. At this point I can give the query a name, so I'm just going to call it QRY Pledge by Campaign. And I'll click Finish to view the query. And here I have a summarized crosstab query with the campaign name as column headings, 3 campaign names, and with the cities as row headings. And where the two intersect, I can see the total amount pledged. And so really I can see that Walla Walla has the most amount pledged at $6.25, and this is how it's broken down by particular campaign names. So this is the biggest city. Let's create another crosstab query. I'll just close this one. And again, it's going to be based on this information in this query called crosstab. So this is our subquery. So I'll close the subquery. To make a crosstab query, I'll go to the Create tab in the ribbon, the Queries group, and choose the Query Wizard. I'll choose the Crosstab Query Wizard and OK. I'd also like to base this crosstab on the query called QRY Crosstab, so I'll select it. So I went Queries and QRY Crosstab, and I'll choose Next. I'd like to select two fields to use as my row headings, and that's what it's asking me at this stage, and the order is important. So I'm going to choose donor name and send that across first, and you can see that there. And then within each donor name, I'd like to see campaign name, so I send campaign name across as well. So we have donor name, campaign name, two row headings. You can have more than one. And I'll go Next. Now I would like to know, what would you like as your column headings? For my column headings, I'd like to see paid. So I'm going to click on Paid. And then click Next. Where the two intersect, I'd like to see the sum of the amount pledged. And then I'll choose Next, and I'll give this query a name, QRY Donor Payments. And I'll click Finish to view the query. What I'm seeing here is -1 and 0. -1 basically means yes, they have paid, and 0 means no, they have not paid. So I'm seeing that there's only one pledge that hasn't been paid. It's $125, and the donor is Carl, and it's towards the campaign Save the Whales. So he's still yet to make that payment. But I think this is pretty unfriendly, seeing -1 for yes and 0 for no. So I'd like to make a change to this particular query design. So I'm going to go into the design of the query simply by going to the Home tab in the ribbon and clicking the View button. What I'd like to do is I'd actually like to replace paid with an if statement. So I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to put payment, colon. So I want a column called payment, and after the colon I'll put an if statement. Now in Access, an if statement has two I's. It's considered an immediate if. So I'm going to go if, open bracket, square bracket. If paid, close square bracket, equals -1, then I want to see the word, comma, double quote, paid, double quote. Else, I want to see unpaid, double quote, unpaid, double quote, and close round bracket. So I want to see a column called payment, and if the field paid equals -1, if that's true, show the word paid. If it's false, show the word unpaid, which means it's a 0. And let's have a look at the view of the query. So I'm going to hit the View button to the very left of my ribbon. And what I now have, instead of -1 and 0, if paid equals -1, show the word paid, otherwise show unpaid. So I can see there's one unpaid donation yet to come from Carl, and it's towards Save the Whales for $125. When that's paid, it will then bring it up to a total of $155 paid. So crosstabs are very good when you want column headings and row headings. I'm now going to close this query, save it yes, and that's Crosstab Queries.